Commander Velix's four arms moved frantically across the control panels as another explosion rocked Meridian Station. The lights flickered, casting strange shadows across the command center where dozens of alien species worked desperately to keep their home alive. Shields at 15%, Thomas Blake called out from his station. The young human engineer wiped sweat from his forehead, his fingers dancing over the glowing controls. We've got maybe 30 minutes left, Commander. Velix clicked his mandibles together, a nervous habit his species couldn't control under stress. Through the massive viewport, he could see them. 23 Kraith warships circled the station like predators around wounded prey. Their dark hulls gleamed under the distant starlight, and their weapons glowed with deadly energy. Send another distress signal, Velix ordered, though his voice carried no hope. All frequencies. The Zenthari communications officer, her crystalline body pulsing with anxious orange light, shook her head. Commander, I've sent 4 to 7 calls. The nearest coalition fleet is still 3 weeks away. Nobody is coming. A family of Kelphi refugees huddled near the emergency exit, their children crying softly. They had fled their destroyed homeworld only to find death waiting at what should have been a safe harbor. Across the command center, engineers and technicians from a dozen different worlds worked side by side, united in their desperation. The main screen crackled to life, showing the scarred face of Warlord Thex. His tusks were stained red with what Velix hoped wasn't blood. The Kraith commander's eyes burned with cruel amusement. Little station, Thex's voice rumbled like grinding stones. Your shields are failing. Your help will not arrive in time. Surrender now, and I promise your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will take you apart piece by piece while you scream. Velix reached for the communication button, but hesitated. What could he possibly say? The Kraith were known throughout the galaxy for their brutality. They took no prisoners. They showed no mercy. Surrender or fight, both roads led to the same dark end. Don't answer him, Thomas said quietly. The human had only worked at Meridian Station for 6 months, but Velix had learned to respect his stubborn courage. Every minute we stay alive is one more chance for a miracle. Miracles don't exist in space, the Zenthari officer said sadly. Only physics and mathematics. And both say we're dead. Thomas turned back to his console, refusing to give up. I can reroute power from the cargo bays and recreational areas. Maybe buy us 20 more minutes. 20 minutes to do what? Velix asked. To pray? To say goodbye? To survive, Thomas replied simply. The station shook violently as another barrage struck the shields. Alarms wailed throughout the structure. Red emergency lights bathed everyone in crimson urgency. On a secondary screen, Velix watched the shield percentage drop, 14%, 13, 12. Hull breach in Sector 7, someone shouted. Outer ring shields are gone. Seal it. Velix commanded. Emergency bulkheads now. Through the viewport, the Kraith fleet tightened their formation. They were preparing for the final assault. Velix had commanded Meridian Station for 8 years. He had seen pirates, dealt with smugglers, survived 2 diplomatic incidents. But he had never faced anything like this. Commander, Thomas said suddenly, his eyes fixed on a small monitor at his station. I'm picking up something weird. Everything is weird right now, Thomas Blake. Be specific. There's a signal. Something's coming toward us. Fast. Really, really fast. The human's fingers moved rapidly across his controls. The speed doesn't make sense. No ship should be able to accelerate like that without tearing itself apart. Velix moved to stand behind Thomas, his primary eyes widening as he studied the sensor data. That's impossible. What kind of ship moves at that velocity? I don't know. It's not matching any ship in the Coalition database. Thomas leaned closer to his screen. The signal is coming from the direction of Earth. From the Terran sector. A human ship. Velix felt confused. But humans don't have military vessels. Your people joined the Coalition as scientists and engineers, not warriors. That's what I thought too, Thomas said slowly. But this signature. I've never seen anything like it. The Zenthari communications officer's body flashed bright white, her species' sign of surprise. Commander. The ship is broadcasting a Coalition transponder, but the encryption is incredibly advanced. Military grade. Command level. Try to contact them, Velix ordered. I'm trying, but they're not responding to standard channels. The officer paused, her crystalline form shimmering. Wait. They're broadcasting something now. Priority military frequency. Every screen in the command center suddenly went black. For one heartbeat, darkness filled the room. Then, simultaneously, every display lit up with the same message in crisp white letters. TUS Ragnarok, inbound, at 90 seconds. What is a TUWS? Felix asked, struggling with the unfamiliar word. Thomas stared at the screen, his face going pale. Terran United warship, he whispered. Oh my god. They actually built it. They really did it. Built what? Explain. But before Thomas could answer, reality itself seemed to tear open directly between Meridian Station and the Kraith fleet. Space rippled and folded, and something massive dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a flash of blue-white energy. The ship was enormous, twice the size of the Kraith flagship. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, seeming to absorb the light around it. Sharp angles and brutal efficiency defined every line. Weapons bristled from its surface like the spines of some deep-sea predator. It didn't look like the graceful vessels the Coalition preferred. It looked like it was built for one purpose only. War. By the ancestors, Felix breathed, unable to look away. On the tactical display, every Kraith weapon system immediately locked onto the newcomer. The human ship hung motionless in space, seemingly unconcerned by the 23 warships preparing to destroy it. Then a voice filled the command center, calm, almost casual, speaking in clear English that the station's translators converted for everyone present. Meridian Station, this is Captain Jack Miller of the TUWS Ragnarok. We received your distress call. Sorry we're late, we were on the other side of the sector. Stand by while we handle this. The communication channel shifted. Half the main view screen showed Warlord Thex's snarling face. The other half showed a human male in a dark military uniform. He had gray hair and cold eyes that reminded Felix of a targeting computer, precise and emotionless. Unknown vessel. Thex roared. You interrupt a Kraith military operation. Withdraw now or die with these cowards. Captain Miller's expression didn't change. He could have been ordering lunch. Negative, Warlord. You have 60 seconds to cease fire and withdraw beyond the neutral zone. This is your only warning. Thex laughed, a terrible sound like metal grinding against metal. One ship against my entire fleet? You humans are fools. I will enjoy watching you burn. 45 seconds, Miller interrupted calmly. I suggest you use that time wisely. The Kraith warlord's face twisted with rage. All ships. Destroy that vessel. Fire everything. What happened next, Felix would remember for the rest of his life. 23 Kraith warships opened fire at once. Plasma bolts, missiles, and particle beams converged on the human vessel in a storm of destruction that could vaporize a small moon. The energy released was enough to power an entire planet for a year. The Ragnarok didn't move. It didn't dodge or try to escape. It simply floated there and took the hit. A shimmering field of energy surrounded the human ship, but it wasn't the normal blue-white color of regular shields. This barrier rippled with colors Felix had never seen before. Purple mixed with silver, green danced with gold. The massive Kraith barrage struck the shield and simply disappeared, absorbed or deflected harmlessly into empty space. When the weapon's fire stopped, the Ragnarok hung in space exactly as before. Not a scratch. Not a dent. Completely undamaged. Impossible, the Zenthari communications officer whispered. No shield in the galaxy can stop that much firepower. Thomas stared at his console, his hands shaking slightly. It's using theoretical physics that Earth published 10 years ago. The other species said it was impossible. They said we were dreaming. On the view screen, Captain Miller looked almost bored. Time's up, Warlord. This is your last chance to leave. Kill them. Thex screamed, his face purple with rage. All power to weapons. Tear that ship to pieces. Captain Miller sighed, actually sighed like a teacher disappointed with a student. Lieutenant Williams, you may fire when ready. The Ragnarok remained still. 3 small panels opened along its front hull. There was no dramatic light show, no weapons charging with visible energy. Just 3 brief flashes. 3 Kraith cruisers ceased to exist. One moment they were there, massive warships preparing to fire again. The next moment they were expanding clouds of gas and metal fragments. They hadn't exploded like normal ships. They had been punched through by something moving so incredibly fast that the metal didn't have time to react before disintegrating. Felix felt his 3 hearts skip beats. What kind of weapon was that? Kinetic lances, Thomas said quietly, his voice filled with awe and horror. Tungsten rods accelerated to 90% the speed of light. We talked about building them, but I never imagined. Detecting 3 more enemy ships charging weapons, a female voice reported from the Ragnarok's bridge. Engaging defensive protocols. This time Velix watched carefully. Tiny shapes erupted from the human warship, dozens of them, each barely larger than a fighter craft. But they moved with perfect coordination, like a school of fish or a flock of birds. Except these were machines, guided by artificial intelligence more advanced than anything the Coalition had developed. The autonomous drones swarmed over the Kraith vessels like hunting animals over prey. Explosions blossomed across enemy hulls as the drones targeted specific systems, weapon batteries, shield generators, engine cores, with surgical precision. Within seconds, 3 more Kraith ships were crippled and drifting. All ships, retreat, one of the Kraith captains shouted over their communication network. Fall back to rally point. But the human ship moved now. And when it moved, physics seemed to break. The massive warship didn't accelerate gradually like normal vessels. It simply shifted position, here one moment, there the next, as if space itself was folding around it. The Ragnarok appeared directly in front of the retreating Kraith fleet, cutting off their escape route. "This is Captain Miller," the human's voice echoed across every frequency. "Final warning. Withdraw now or be destroyed. You have 30 seconds. Warlord Thex's face filled the screen, twisted with fury and something else, something that might have been fear. The Kraith Dominion never retreats. All ships, new target, the station. If we cannot take it, we will destroy it. They're turning their weapons on us, the Zen-3 officer cried out. Velix felt cold dread wash over him. Even damaged, the Kraith fleet had more than enough firepower to obliterate Meridian Station's failing shields. Captain Miller's voice remained perfectly calm. "Lieutenant Williams, defensive pattern Omega. Protect the station at all costs." The Ragnarok moved again, executing a maneuver that made Velix's head hurt trying to understand it. The massive warship used Meridian Station's own gravity like a slingshot, whipping around the outpost at impossible speed. It positioned itself between the station and the incoming Kraith attack like a shield made of metal and determination. Thousands of small weapons across the Ragnarok's hull came alive. Point defense systems created a web of intersecting fire that detonated missiles in space and deflected energy beams before they could reach the station. The human ship was protecting them, taking hits meant for Meridian Station without flinching. Then Captain Miller spoke 3 quiet words that would echo through Coalition history: "Weapons free, Lieutenant." The Ragnarok unleashed hell. Electromagnetic pulses erupted from the human ship, scrambling Kraith targeting computers and navigation systems. Enemy ships drifted blind, their sensors showing nothing but static. Then something invisible attacked their computer systems, cyber warfare protocols that turned the Kraith ship's own systems against them. Airlocks opened randomly, engines fired in wrong directions, weapons targeted their own fleet. A Kraith destroyer, desperate and enraged, attempted a suicide run straight at the Ragnarok. The human ship pivoted with impossible grace for something so large, and fired another kinetic lance. The tungsten rod punched through the destroyer's reactor core. The ship exploded in a brief, violent sun. Velix watched in stunned silence. This wasn't warfare as the Coalition understood it. Coalition battles were about honor, about following established rules of engagement. This was something primal and terrifying. The humans fought like they had studied war for thousands of years and perfected it into a science. "New contacts." Thomas suddenly shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Multiple Kraith ships dropping out of FTL. Reading, "Oh no. It's a supercarrier." The massive reinforcement vessel appeared at the edge of the system, its hull large enough to build a city inside. Surrounding it were 40 additional warships, all fresh and undamaged. The command center fell into horrified silence. The supercarrier alone was 3 times the size of the Ragnarok. Then, impossibly, Captain Miller laughed. Not a cruel laugh or a nervous one. A genuine sound of amusement. "Well now," he said, and Velix could hear the smile in his voice. "That's what we call a target-rich environment. Lieutenant Williams?" "Yes, sir," the female voice responded. "Activate the Sunder." "Confirmed, Captain. Main weapon charging now. 30 seconds to full power." Velix turned to Thomas. "What is a Sunder?" The human engineer's face had gone completely white. "It's a directed energy weapon. Theoretical. It doesn't destroy ships directly, it destabilizes their fusion reactors from a distance." He paused, swallowing hard. "If it works like the simulations predicted." The Ragnarok began to glow. Energy gathered along its spine, building in intensity. The dark gray hull lit up with lines of blue-white light that grew brighter and brighter. The Kraith supercarrier's weapons charged, preparing to fire. 40 warships moved into attack formation. Sunder at full charge, Lieutenant Williams reported. Target locked. Firing. A beam of pure energy lanced across space, invisible except where it touched matter. It struck the supercarrier's massive hull and penetrated deep, reaching the reactor core. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the supercarrier's fusion reactor went critical. The massive ship exploded from the inside out, releasing energy equivalent to a small star going nova. The shockwave caught 15 nearby Kraith vessels, tearing them apart like paper in a hurricane. When the light faded, only 8 Kraith ships remained of the original fleet of 64. They hung in space, engines already spinning up for emergency FTL jumps. Warlord Thex's voice came through, broken and defeated. What AI you humans? Captain Miller's response was simple and cold. We're the species that doesn't give up. And we're the ones who answer when our friends call for help. Remember that. The remaining Kraith ships vanished into faster-than-light travel, fleeing into the dark. Meridian Station was saved. The silence in Meridian Station's command center was deafening. Everyone stared at the empty space where moments ago a Kraith armada had threatened to end their lives. Now there was nothing but debris and the fading glow of destroyed ships. They're gone, the Zenthari communications officer whispered, her crystalline body pulsing with disbelief. They're actually gone. Velix collapsed into his command chair, his forearms trembling. In 30 years of service, he had never witnessed anything like what just happened. One ship. One human warship had defeated an entire Kraith fleet. Thomas was already working his console, running diagnostic checks on the station's damaged systems. His hands moved automatically, but Velix could see the shock in the young human's eyes. Even he hadn't known what his species was capable of. The main view screen flickered. Captain Miller's face appeared, his gray hair slightly disheveled now, a thin cut across his left cheek. Meridian Station, we're coming alongside to dock. We have medical teams and engineering crews ready to assist with repairs. Thank you, Captain, Velix managed to say. You saved our lives. Just doing our job, Commander. Miller out. 30 minutes later, Velix stood at the main docking port as it opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Human Marines filed through, 12 men and women in dark combat armor that looked both sleek and intimidating. They moved with quiet efficiency, their weapons held ready but not threatening. Their eyes scanned everything, missing nothing. Behind them came Captain Jack Miller. He was shorter than Velix expected, perhaps 5 feet 9 inches in human measurements. His uniform was simple, dark blue with minimal decorations. But the way he carried himself spoke of absolute authority and confidence. Commander Velix, Miller extended his hand in the human greeting gesture. Good to finally meet you face to face. Velix carefully shook the offered hand with one of his own. Captain Miller. I must ask, where did that ship come from? The Coalition has no records of human military vessels like the Ragnarok. Miller's expression grew serious. Let's talk somewhere private, Commander. They walked to Velix's office, a small room overlooking the station's central plaza where refugees and residents were emerging from shelters, relief and joy on their faces. Miller waited until the door closed before speaking. The Ragnarok is one of 12 Vanguard-class warships, Miller said quietly. Earth built them over the past 20 years in complete secrecy. They're our insurance policy. Insurance against what? Velix asked, confused. Against being helpless, Miller replied. He moved to the window, looking out at the mixed crowd of alien species below. When humanity joined the Coalition 50 years ago, we were excited. We thought we'd found peace among the stars. But we also remembered our history. What history? Miller turned back to face him. Earth has known war for thousands of years, Commander. We fought each other, nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. We learned hard lessons about what happens when you're not prepared. When my great-grandparents joined the Coalition, they made a promise to themselves, humanity would share everything that could help others. Science, medicine, agriculture, art. But we would never, ever be defenseless again. Velix clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. So while you shared peaceful technology with the Coalition, you secretly built weapons. We built defenses, Miller corrected gently. There's a difference. We offered to share our military research with the Coalition Council 15 years ago. They refused. Called our approach to warfare barbaric and unnecessary. He smiled without humor. They said species like the Kraith would never attack coalition stations because of diplomatic agreements. They were wrong, Velix said quietly. They were wrong, Miller agreed. An alarm chimed softly. Miller touched his wrist communicator. Miller here. Captain, this is Lieutenant Emily Carter. We've finished casualty reports. The woman's voice was tight with emotion. 23 crew members killed in action. 41 wounded, 12 critical. Miller closed his eyes briefly. Understood, Lieutenant. Prepare the memorial bay. We'll hold the service in 6 hours. Yes, sir. Carter out. Velix felt his heart sink. In the chaos and relief of survival, he had forgotten that the human ship had been fighting too. Captain, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. They knew the risks, Miller said softly. Every person on the Ragnarok volunteered for this mission. We all knew there might be a day when we'd have to prove that Earth's deterrent force was real. He looked out the window again. But knowing doesn't make it easier. 6 hours later, Velix attended the memorial service aboard the Ragnarok. The ship's main bay had been converted into a somber chapel. 23 photographs floated in holographic displays, young faces, old faces, men and women from every continent on Earth. Captain Miller stood before his crew, his voice steady but heavy with grief. We honor those who gave everything today. They died protecting people they'd never met, defending a station thousands of light years from home. They died so others could live. There is no greater sacrifice. The human crew stood at attention, many with tears streaming down their faces. Velix watched and understood something profound. These humans weren't just warriors. They felt deeply, grieved deeply, but they fought anyway. After the service, Velix met Lieutenant Emily Carter, the ship's medical officer. She was a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and hands that had clearly saved many lives that day. Your people are remarkable, Velix told her. You fight like nothing I've ever seen, but you also mourn like this. Emily looked at the photograph still floating in the air. We're human, Commander. We feel everything intensely. Love, grief, anger, joy. That's what makes us dangerous and also what makes us fight so hard for others. A Zenthari observer nearby, one of the rescued station residents, spoke up hesitantly. But why? Why build ships like this? Why develop such terrible weapons? Emily turned to face the crystalline being. Because we learned from our own history. Earth almost destroyed itself 3 times. Nuclear war, climate collapse, AI conflicts. We survived by learning one lesson, hope for peace, but prepare for war. But the cost, the Zenthari said, gesturing at the memorial photos. 23 lives. Was it worth it? Ask the 6,000 people on Meridian Station who are alive right now, Emily replied quietly. Ask the Kelphi children who still have a future. Ask Commander Velix if he'd rather we hadn't come. The Zenthari's body pulsed with understanding and fell silent. Later, Lieutenant James Park, the Ragnarok's chief engineer, gave Thomas a tour of the ship's systems. Thomas stared in awe at technology he'd only read about in theoretical papers. We spent resources building these ships that could have fed millions, educated billions, James said quietly. Every piece of technology here represents a choice, protection instead of comfort, security instead of luxury. Do you regret it? Thomas asked. James looked at him seriously. Today, 6,000 beings are alive who would be dead. No, I don't regret it. But I carry the weight of what we chose not to build. That's the burden of being dangerous, you always wonder if there was another way. As the Ragnarok's crew worked to repair Meridian Station, word spread through coalition channels. A single human warship had destroyed a Kraith armada. The news traveled fast, sparking debates, fears, and questions across hundreds of worlds. Coalition Command sent urgent messages demanding explanations. How many ships did Earth have? What other weapons were hidden? Had humanity violated treaties? Captain Miller stood on his bridge, reading the incoming transmissions. Lieutenant Williams approached him. Sir, Command is ordering us to remain here and submit to an investigation. Miller nodded slowly. Acknowledged. Send a reply, we'll comply fully. We have nothing to hide. Do you think they'll understand, sir? Why we built these ships in secret? Miller looked at the stars through the viewport. Some will. Some won't. But today proved one thing, Lieutenant. When the crisis came, when people needed help, we were there. Let history judge whether we were right. Outside, 11 more Vanguard-class warships silently took up positions across coalition space, invisible guardians waiting in the dark. The galaxy was learning a new truth: humanity had arrived, and they had brought their strength with them. 3 days after the battle, Meridian Station's main conference hall was packed with representatives from 24 coalition species. The room buzzed with angry voices, fearful whispers, and heated arguments in a dozen different languages. Commander Velix stood at the entrance, watching the chaos unfold. The Axion Imperium delegates, a militaristic species known for their own powerful fleet, were shouting about treaty violations. The peaceful Lamari were trembling with fear, their bioluminescent skin flickering with anxiety. The Zenthari representatives pulsed with confused colors, unable to decide if they should be grateful or terrified. "This is a disaster," Velix muttered to Thomas, who stood beside him. "Or an opportunity," Thomas replied quietly. "Depends on how we handle it." At the center of the storm stood Captain Jack Miller, his expression calm despite the accusations flying around him. Beside him was a tall human woman in elegant diplomatic robes, Dr. Rebecca Foster, Earth's ambassador to the Coalition. "Order." Ambassador Foster's voice cut through the noise like a blade. The room gradually fell silent. "We will address concerns in an organized manner. First, I want to make one thing absolutely clear: Earth has violated no treaties. You built warships in secret," an Axion delegate roared, his scales bristling with aggression. "Ships more powerful than anything in the Coalition fleet. How is that not a violation?" Rebecca met his gaze without flinching. "Show me the treaty clause that forbids it." The Coalition Charter allows member species to maintain defensive forces using their own resources. That's exactly what Earth did. A Lamari representative stood, her voice soft and trembling. "But why hide them? Why not tell us you were building such terrible weapons?" Rebecca's expression softened slightly. "We tried. 15 years ago, Earth offered to share our military research with the Coalition Council. We presented designs, theories, technological innovations. Do you know what the Council said?" Silence filled the room. "They called our approach to warfare barbaric," Rebecca continued. "They said our weapons were too violent, too destructive. They said diplomatic agreements would prevent any serious conflicts." She gestured toward Captain Miller. 3 days ago, the Kraith proved them wrong. 6,000 beings would be dead right now if we had listened. An elderly Valorian diplomat, her face weathered with age and wisdom, spoke up. "Ambassador Foster, we understand Earth acted within legal boundaries. But you must understand our concern. You joined the Coalition as scientists and teachers, not warriors. Now we discover you have ships that can destroy entire fleets. What else are you hiding?" Rebecca took a deep breath. "Nothing that threatens the Coalition. Everything Earth has built is defensive in nature. The Vanguard-class ships exist for one purpose: to protect Coalition members when traditional forces cannot respond in time." "And who decides when to deploy them?" the Axion delegate demanded. "Who gave Earth the authority to act as the Coalition's protector?" "Nobody gave us authority," Captain Miller spoke for the first time, his voice calm but firm. "We took responsibility. There's a difference." The room erupted again. Some delegates nodded in agreement. Others shouted protests. The Axion delegate's face turned dark purple with rage. A new voice cut through the chaos, deep and guttural. Everyone turned to see a holographic projection materializing at the far end of the room. It was Warlord Thex of the Kraith Dominion, his scarred face filling the display. "I demand justice." Thex roared. "The humans used illegal weapons against my fleet. They violated the warfare accords. I demand reparations and trials." Rebecca raised an eyebrow. "You attacked a civilian station unprovoked, Warlord. You threatened to execute thousands of innocent beings. And now you want justice." "The human ship used a weapon that destabilized our fusion reactors." Thex snarled. "Such weapons are banned under Coalition law." Captain Miller stepped forward. "Actually, Warlord, they are not. The ban covers weapons that cause unnecessary suffering to living beings. The Sundra targets reactor cores, not crew members. It's perfectly legal." Thex's tusks ground together in fury. For a long moment, he stared at the human captain. Then, something unexpected happened. The Kraith Warlord's expression changed, anger fading into something that might have been respect. "You fight well, human," Thex said slowly. "My warriors underestimated you. We thought your species weak, soft. We were wrong." He paused. "The Kraith Dominion withdraws all claims against Earth. You fought with honor. We will not make the mistake of underestimating you again." The hologram flickered and vanished, leaving shocked silence in its wake. Rebecca seized the moment. The Kraith, who respect only strength, have acknowledged Earth's right to defend itself and its allies. Now, I propose a new framework, the Meridian Accords. She activated a display showing a detailed document. Earth will share defensive shield technology with all coalition members. We will provide training in advanced tactical systems. In exchange, the coalition officially recognizes humanity's right to maintain strategic deterrent forces. The Lumari representative spoke hesitantly. And these deterrent forces, how many ships are we talking about? 12 Vanguard-class warships, Rebecca answered honestly. Positioned across coalition space. They respond to distress calls and protect members who cannot defend themselves. So Earth becomes our guardian, the Axion delegate sneered. We should just trust you to protect us. No, Rebecca said firmly. You should trust yourselves to protect yourselves using technology we'll share freely. The Vanguard ships are backup, last resort protection when everything else fails. Over the next 6 hours, the debate continued. Some species supported Earth's position. Others remained suspicious. But slowly, reluctantly, a consensus formed. The galaxy had changed. The Kraith attack had proven that peaceful intentions alone couldn't guarantee safety. By the end of the day, the Meridian Accords were drafted. Earth would share defensive technology and tactical training. In return, humanity gained official recognition of their strategic fleet and a permanent seat on the Coalition Defense Council. When the conference finally ended, Velix found Captain Miller standing alone on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. You won, Velix said simply. Miller shook his head. Nobody won, Commander. We just survived another day and learned to work together better. The other species fear you now. Fear is honest, Miller replied. Better than being dismissed or underestimated. Fear means they take us seriously. Respect will come later, once they see we mean what we say about protecting them. Velix clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. You really would cross the galaxy to save strangers? Miller looked at him directly. 3 days ago, you weren't strangers. You were people calling for help. That's all we needed to know. Back on the Ragnarok, Thomas received a formal offer from Captain Miller. We need engineers who understand both human and alien technology. You'd be valuable on this crew. Thomas looked around the ship that had saved his life and everyone he knew. When do I start? Tomorrow, Lieutenant Emily Carter said with a smile. Welcome to the Vanguard, Thomas. Across Coalition space, the news spread. Earth had revealed its strength. The young species that joined the Coalition only 50 years ago had become a major power overnight. Some species celebrated having powerful new allies. Others worried about humanity's true intentions. But on Meridian Station, the 6,000 survivors knew exactly what Earth's intentions were. They had seen it in action. Humanity would answer the call when others could not. 2 weeks had passed since the battle. Meridian Station's shields were fully repaired, its hull patched, and its people beginning to feel safe again. In the main plaza, children from a dozen species played together while their parents watched with grateful smiles. The Kelphi refugees had stopped crying at night. The station felt like home again. Commander Velix stood in the docking bay, watching as the Ragnarok prepared to depart. Human engineers were running final system checks. Marines loaded supplies onto transport shuttles. The massive warship's dark gray hull gleamed under the station's lights, no longer looking quite so frightening to those who knew what it represented. You're really leaving? Velix asked Captain Jack Miller, who stood beside him reviewing departure protocols on a datapad. We have patrol routes to maintain, Miller replied. Other stations to watch over. But we'll be back this way in 6 weeks. And if you need us before then, just call. Thomas Blake approached, wearing a new uniform, the dark blue of the Terran United Warship Service. He carried a small bag of personal belongings and looked both excited and nervous. Ready for your first assignment? Miller asked him. Yes, sir, Thomas said, though his voice shook slightly. Though I'll miss this place. Velix extended one of his 4 arms. You'll do well, Thomas Blake. You have the courage to face impossible odds and the wisdom to never give up. Those are good qualities for someone serving on a ship like the Ragnarok. They shook hands one final time. Thomas boarded the ship, disappearing into its corridors to begin his new life. Lieutenant Emily Carter was the last to board. She paused at the airlock entrance and turned back to Velix. Take care of this station, Commander. You saved a lot of lives by refusing to surrender. You saved more by showing up when nobody else could, Velix replied. Emily smiled sadly. We're not heroes, Commander. We're just the ones who answered when you called. That's exactly what makes you heroes, Velix said quietly. The airlock sealed with a hiss. Velix moved to the observation deck where hundreds of station residents had gathered to watch the departure. Families stood together. Workers from every shift had come to say goodbye. Even species who had initially feared the human warship now waved and cheered. The Ragnarok's engines hummed to life, glowing with blue-white energy. The massive ship detached from the docking clamps and began moving away from the station with surprising grace for something so large. On the Ragnarok's bridge, Captain Miller sat in his command chair and looked at his crew. Lieutenant Williams at Tactical. Lieutenant James Park at Engineering. Lieutenant Emily Carter monitoring medical stations. And now Thomas Blake at the auxiliary console, learning his new role. All stations report ready, Captain, Williams said. Miller nodded. Open a channel to Meridian Station. Velix's face appeared on the main view screen. Meridian Station reads you, Captain. Commander, it's been an honor serving alongside you, Miller said formally. Keep your people safe. And you keep the rest of the galaxy safe, Captain Miller, Velix replied. We'll be watching for you. Miller smiled, a genuine expression of warmth. Computer, begin final log entry for the Meridian Station deployment. The ship's AI chimed softly. Miller took a breath and spoke clearly for the official record. Captain's log, final entry. Today we learned something important about the galaxy we've joined. When crisis comes, when people cry out for help, what matters isn't which species you belong to or what language you speak. What matters is showing up. Being there when hope is dying and darkness is closing in. He paused, choosing his words carefully. The galaxy learned what Earth already knew. Hope isn't about waiting for someone to save you. It's about being the one who saves someone else. Miller out. He closed the log and turned to his helmsman. Take us out, standard departure vector. Once we're clear of the station, prepare for FTL jump. Aye, Captain, the helmsman responded. As the Ragnarok moved away, something extraordinary happened. Every ship docked at Meridian Station, freighters, passenger vessels, mining craft, even a few small private yachts, activated their running lights in sequence. One by one, they blinked in a pattern that was the universal signal for respect and gratitude. Even the Axion military observer ship, which had been monitoring the situation with suspicion, flashed its lights in acknowledgement. Sir, Williams said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. They're saluting us. Miller stood from his chair and moved to the viewport. Through the transparent hull, he could see the station and all the ships around it, their lights twinkling like stars. Return the salute, Lieutenant. All running lights, 3-second intervals. The Ragnarok's lights blazed to life, responding to the honor being shown. For a moment, human and alien vessels communicated without words, sharing a simple truth. They were allies now, bound together by the crisis they had survived. Captain, Thomas called from his station, his voice excited. I'm detecting unusual signals across Coalition space. Multiple locations. Specify, Miller ordered. Thomas's hands flew across his controls, analyzing the data. They're transponder signals. Vanguard-class signatures. All 11 other ships are broadcasting their positions. Miller exchanged glances with Williams. Put it on the tactical display. The main screen shifted to show a map of Coalition territory. 11 points of light appeared across the vast expanse of space, each one representing a Vanguard-class warship taking up a Guardian position. One near the Lumari homeworld. One protecting the trade routes through the Zenthari Nebula. One watching over the outer colonies where the Kelphi refugees had originally fled from. 11 silent protectors, revealing themselves for the first time. They're sending a message, Williams said softly. They want everyone to know we're here. Not just here, Emily said from her medical station. Watching. Protecting. Ready. Miller nodded slowly. Humanity's promise to the Coalition. We'll stand guard so others can sleep safely. On Meridian Station, Velix saw the tactical display showing the Vanguard positions. His mandibles clicked with understanding. Around him, other species representatives stared at the screen in awe and perhaps a little remaining fear. 12 ships, someone whispered. 12 Guardians across the entire Coalition. Is it enough? Another asked. Velix thought about the Ragnarok destroying an entire Kraith armada. He thought about Captain Miller's calm voice promising to protect them. He thought about the human crew who had died so others could live. Yes, Velix said firmly. It's enough. Across the galaxy, On 100 different worlds, the news spread. Humans had revealed their full strength. The species that joined the coalition as teachers and scientists had shown they were also warriors when necessary. Some species celebrated. Others worried. But none could deny the simple truth: the paradigm had shifted. The Ragnarok reached minimum safe distance and engaged its FTL drive. Space rippled and folded, and the great warship vanished in a flash of light, jumping to its next patrol zone. In his quarters, Captain Miller sat alone for a moment, looking at the photographs of the 23 crew members who had died in the battle. Their sacrifice had proven Earth's commitment to the coalition. Their memory would drive him to ensure no more lives were wasted. On the bridge, Thomas stood beside Lieutenant Park, staring at the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel through the viewport. "Are you scared?" Park asked the young engineer. Thomas thought about it honestly. "Yes. But I'm also hopeful. We proved something important, that help can come even when it seems impossible. That someone will answer when you call into the darkness." Park nodded. "That's what the Vanguard is all about. Being the answer to someone's prayer. Being hope when hope has died." Far behind them, Meridian Station resumed its peaceful routines. But the people there would never forget. They would tell their children and grandchildren about the day the Kraith came with death in their hearts, and how a single human ship appeared when all hope seemed lost. They would remember the species that chose to be dangerous so others wouldn't have to be. They would remember that humanity kept its promises. And across the galaxy, in dark corners where predators lurked and violence waited, a new calculation was being made. The humans were no longer the weak newcomers. They were protectors. They were warriors. They were allies worth having and enemies worth fearing. The galaxy had learned its lesson. When someone called for help, Earth would answer. Always.